Welcome back to another episode of Hustle and Grace. I'm your host, Hilary Sutton, and this episode is brought to you by Dun& and Bradstreet. Monitor changes to your business credit file for free. Credit is key for your small business. Sign up for free notifications on changes to your business credit file. It's free. Learn more at the link in the show notes. Hello. I'm so glad to be back with you. I blinked and a few months went by. Our last episode was a fantastic conversation with Seth Godin. If you haven't caught that episode, I would recommend giving that a listen after you listen to this one. It's one of my all-time favorites, and it was such a treat to get to talk with Seth about all things careers. So, as I recorded this, we're in the throes of the hustle and bustle of the holiday season. There are so many additional tasks on the to-do list that come with this time of year, especially if you're a parent, you're trying to make magic. So whether you find yourself in the end of the year busyness as you listen to this, or the beginning of the year new slateness, I want to wish you happy holidays and encourage you as you begin to think about shaping the new year to align with your vision and goals. So that is what this episode is about. Every year, somewhere between Christmas and mid-January, I do this sort of like taking stock ritual. I try to carve out space for envisioning what I want the new year to look like and who I want to grow to be in the new year. And this year, I thought I would break this down and share it with you in case it's helpful to you. So, this is a few steps to get closure on last year, move into the new year with clarity and focus and energy. So, this is the first year that I have broken down my review of the past year and setting goals for the next year into monthly increments. So instead of doing a big review once a year and planning with goals and whatnot once a year, I do this on a monthly basis. And this has been really good for me. It helps me connect my big goals to my practical schedule because that is where intentions meet reality, right? So, first, I make a list every month of the highlights from the previous month. This can be as granular as the books I read, shows I enjoyed watching, things that I want to remember that went really well that month, to, social gatherings and career wins. And so I have a folder of Google Docs of each month, of those highlights of each month. And then the second thing I do is I review my credit card statements and write down all of my business expenses. So this is really helpful to do when all my expenses are sort of fresh on my brain. As a business owner, you definitely want to keep track of your business expenses over the course of a year. And this can be super overwhelming to do once a year, to dig out receipts, to go back through credit card statements and try to figure out what was a business expense and what wasn't. So I do this at the end of every month. I also set goals and make plans for the following month based on my bigger values and long-term goals. Over the past few years, I've enjoyed doing 20 for 2020, 21 for 2021. Last year I did 23 for 2023. And these aren't like big mammoth, lose 20 pounds, write a book, like all of those kind of big, big, big things. These are smaller things that I really try that really reflect the values that I want to live out in the following year. For example, on last year's list, I wrote, I want to host a dinner party. I really want to have a home where we do hosting on a regular basis. And I love quality time with a small group of friends, like 6 or 7. So that was on my list last year, things like that. And so then each month I look back at my big annual list and I try to plug those things in on a monthly basis. And also, like, my goals are ever changing. The things that I want to achieve, the things that I want to do change on a monthly basis. And it also is totally affected by my energy level. What else is going on in my life? What are the stressors that I wasn't expecting? What are the things that come up that I wasn't anticipating? So every month it kind of changes a little bit. And then I also, at the end, or at the turn of each month, I do my budgeting for the next month. So I figure out how much I earned in the previous month and I give every dollar a place to go for the following month. And I can also begin to project how much is going into savings and how much and how well we are living within our means. So that's what I do every single month. And so I'm really excited this year to be able to go back and look at the details of each month. Like I can see how many one-on-one dates I went on with my husband, how many social gatherings we did with friends, how many times I got to see a piece of live theater, or how many books I read, how many shows I enjoyed watching, all those kind of things. Not to mention the months when I began working with a new client that I love, or made a revenue goal or hit a revenue goal. So it's been really great to be able to have those notes to go back on, to go back and look at, that I, created at the end of each month. So I definitely recommend continuing to do that. I also, at the end of each month, do menu planning for the following month. If you are the person who is in charge of dinner at your house, I know that it can get fatiguing trying to figure out what you're going to cook all the time. And that's something that definitely, by the end of the day, I've been working, I've been with my kids, I've been trying to get a million things done. I don't have the creativity or the energy to figure out what's for dinner. So I do that in one big 1 month chunks. I actually got that. I think it was from Sarah Hart Unger. She co-hosts the Best of Both Worlds podcast with Laura Vanderkam. And she talked about menu planning on a monthly basis. And man, I started that. I think my notes say I started in April, could have been March. And that has been so helpful for me, even with just like putting spaghetti on a Tuesday, I can go in and put it 3 weeks later on a Thursday. It's so helpful to just go ahead and do it. And then when I do my weekly grocery shopping, all those menus are ready to go. It's just pretty simple. And I don't do super details. Like it's usually here's what the main is. And then I figure out, the week of what sides I want to go with on like a seasonal basis. So I do that at the end of every month. And I also, so that is my ritual on a monthly basis for what I do at the end of every month that helps me take stock on a regular basis of what matters most and what's getting done. So then at the end of the year, I do like a much bigger, more thoughtful retreat like review. So when I'm doing that, I do a few things. First, I read through my monthly reviews. I see what those things are that I accomplished. I see what those things are that I'm very glad that got my time each month. And I can take stock of my goals that I set out to do at the beginning of the year. And I can see, oh, a lot of these got done, but some of these didn't. And maybe my values have changed. Maybe I've gotten realistic about the things that I'm going to do. Like, for example, at the beginning of last year, I really wanted to do some sort of seasonal special craft with my kids at least every quarter. And guess how many times I did that this year? Not a once. I am releasing that to preschool and to grandparents and other moments that are not part of my time with my girls, because I've realized that that is something that I like the idea of. My aspirational self does that, but my real self just doesn't. I'm just not a cotton balls and glue and scissors and construction paper kind of person. I spend time with my girls in other ways. So I've realized that there are some things that I put on my list for the beginning of the year that I've realized, you know what? I can release this. This is not something that is realistic for me to do. It's not something that I really enjoy doing. Just because you think you should be doing something doesn't mean that you're going to enjoy it. So you got to find a balance between the two. The third thing I do as a part of my wrapping up the year ritual is wrestling with what disappointed me, where I felt I failed or dropped the ball, and what I would do differently next year. So, this is probably the most uncomfortable part of the ritual, but it's important to get real about what you wanted to change this year or what you wanted to do this year that didn't get done, and then why it didn't get done. Was it a lack of time? Was it a lack of money? Was it that your heart really wasn't in it? Did something change? Kind of figuring out what happened with those things and figuring out if you want to put it on the list again for next year. And then it's taking stock of relationships. Am I happy with how I invested my time? I've talked before about how your time is like a closet, like there's only so much that you can stuff into it. And it's the same thing with your calendar. So, have you been happy with the people that you've invested in? Have you been happy with your relationships? Do you feel lonely? Do you feel like you've really built some meaningful friendships and spent quality time with the people who matter most to you? And then I look at my career accomplishments. Am I where I wanted to be this time last year? Am I happy with the way that things went? Am I happy with my workload, with the projects that I'm working on? Am I happy with the clients that I'm working with? Do I feel respected? Do I feel really connected to their mission and where they want to go? Do I feel like I'm serving them well? Do I enjoy working with these people? It's a great time to sort of take stock of that kind of thing, especially if you're a small business owner. You can see, okay, how's revenue going? How are expenses going? Money in, money out. How do I want to grow next year? What is it that I want to achieve? And what would I have changed about this year if I could? So for me, I had a pretty substantial revenue goal, which I didn't hit. I did grow revenue by 26%, which was pretty amazing. But the truth is, to have hit that revenue goal, I would have had to spend a lot more time sitting at my desk working. I would have had to spend a lot more time doing business development. So I need to think about, do I want that same revenue goal for next year? If so, something in my schedule has to change. So part of this whole wrapping up the year ritual is determining if you want to continue on the trajectory that you're on, what needs to change in your life or what needs to stay the same. And to think about this year in terms of the bigger picture. I did this amazing exercise in a goal setting workshop the other day where on a spreadsheet we put the year in one column, our age in the next column, the age of our family members, and you can see row by row how quickly the time goes and how soon no longer will you have a 4 and a 6-year old, you'll have a fourth grader and a sixth grader. And then how far away are you from retirement? How far away are you from, your kids going off to college? So that's something to think about. Maybe this is not the year where you want to really double down on your work ambitions, but maybe it's the time that you want to think about having a more time for your little kids because they're not going to be at home as much, when they go off to kindergarten in a year or two. So it's a good thing to think about in terms of where this year is in the row of the spreadsheet of your life, right? So then one ritual that I've done for several years that I definitely recommend is journaling somewhere around the first of the year as if it is January 1st of the next year and writing about a page all of the things that you are happy that occurred over the previous year. So I'm talking about, if today is January 1st, 2024, you're journaling as if it's January 1st, 2025, and you say, it's been an amazing year. These are the things that I accomplished at work. These are the ways that I spent time with my family. These are the trips that we went on. I'm so happy that, whatever it is that envision what you will be glad to write that occurred in 2024 as if it's 2025. So that has been a really good exercise for me to see what it is that's most important to me, not only what feels most urgent, but really what's most important, right? Because it's easy when you are looking at what you have on your plate today and what needs to get done this week. It's easy to forget what is going to matter most a year from now and what you're going to be really glad happened last year. So that is something that I recommend doing. You know, I'm talking about the various spheres of your life, the various roles that you play, because of course you play several roles, right? I'm talking about work, I'm talking about spiritual life, your community, your friends, your family, your children, your creative pursuits, all of it. So think about, you know, journal as if you're time traveling to the future and you write about what happened over the course of the last year that you're really happy about. And then that will help give you clarity about where you want to spend your time and what gets put on your calendar over the course of the next year. And then the last thing I do is make a list of goals for the year ahead. And I don't edit myself. This is not the part where it's like, well, what is realistic and what is plausible and what is possible? This is where I just go deep into my aspirational self, what I want to accomplish over the next year, what I want to make time for over the next year, what I feel like didn't get enough of my time or energy last year that I want to course correct for the next year. So, for example, I really, on my list last year was at least a monthly date night with my husband. And the good news is we got a substantial amount of time out with other adults. So, a lot of times we had our kids with us, but we did host some families came over for dinner and different things like that. But when it came to one-on-one dinners out of the house with my husband, we didn't hit that 12 times last year goal. It was more like 8. And which is not bad, but it's not where we want to be. We really want to have intentional time out of our house together reconnecting. And so this year I have that back on my list at least monthly, and we're going to try to do a couple of different things. One, we're going to try to have dinner, just the two of us, after we put our kids to bed at least once a week. So we haven't fully decided on if that's the same night of the week every week or if it's going to vary depending on what's going on in life. But that's something that we're going to try to do, that we're going to, either cook or we'll do takeout or whatever. But we're going to set aside that time at home for like an at home date night. And then once a month, we're really going to try to go out. Um, Maybe sometimes we will be with other couples, but uh, that's going to be extra. What's going to be set for each month is one-on-one time, the two of us going somewhere, even if it's just a little spot in the neighborhood. So I'm trying to go ahead and carve that out on the calendar, block off some Friday nights, because we really need that quality time together. And as I'm looking at growing my business, one thing that I'm going to do is really, instead of just having a pie in the sky, lofty goal of revenue, I'm going to be consistent with the same revenue goal I had last year, but I'm going to break that down on a monthly basis and figure out what do I need to set aside time-wise? How many businesses do I need to reach out to in order to build those new client projects? And what do I need to do now to ensure that I have that pipeline filled in February, in March, in April, in the summer? So it's breaking it down from one big number for the year to, okay, what does that mean per month? And then how many, potential clients do I need to be reaching out to now about next quarter? And then how can I make my service offerings the right offer for the clients that are reaching out to me that also makes sense for my time availability. And then if I need to hire other people, thinking through that. So there, I still definitely have some substantial planning to do over the next few weeks, but that is something that you can be doing too. Think about, on a monthly basis, doing that review, taking stock of what those happy moments were in the month before, where you really saw growth, where you exceeded your own expectations, those little things that you want to remember. If you finish reading a certain book of the Bible, write that down. These lists can really help us take stock and be present and also help us remember things that we wouldn't otherwise remember. Because when you have a lot on your plate, it's easy to forget things. It's easy to forget the details. It's much it's easy to just remember how you feel, but not remember why you feel that way. So take stock, plan things in, monthly increments, and set those goals on a monthly basis based on what your values are. And I hope that you take the time to really do a full review um, of the year that you've had and can have a lot of clarity going into 2024. And to help you as you go through this process of taking stock on the last year and setting your goals for the new year, I want to give you my New Year's goal setting workbook. This is a workbook that I put together a few years ago that I pull out every year to do this process. So it demystifies the goal setting process. So you know exactly what you need to do to make reality look more like your dreams in the new year. You can find that at hillarysutton.com/ goal setting workbook, all one word, hillarysutton.com/goal setting workbook.